This is the Etiology podcast. I am your host, Elka Kubaku, licensed social worker and psychotherapist. In this podcast, we explore divisive issues around food, health, and body image with the goal of mending relationships within the eating disorder recovery professional community and creating a space where a multiplicity of perspectives can coexist harmoniously. This podcast is uncensored and encompasses the political and ideological spectrum. If you believe something you hear is harmful or misinformed, please be respectful to the speaker. And also, feel free to reach out about recording another episode on the same topic from your vantage point. My hope is that if, as professionals, we can hold each other's stories with respect and compassion, we'll be better able to do so for our clients. As we learn and grow, we also begin to recognize the inadequacy of what we once believed. For healthcare professionals, this realization comes with the added weight of knowing that our past lack of knowledge may have hurt the people we worked with and cared for. In the eating disorder recovery field, there is an increasing movement away from restrictive dieting as research emerges showing that restrictive diets are unsustainable and often damaging. For a dietitian, the challenge of making the shift is often twofold, both personal and professional. How does a person navigate a shift that involves not only their relationship with their own body, but also their professional identity? In this episode, Jenna Talleda shares her story of being shamed for her weight, engaging in restrictive dieting and weight loss, training as a dietitian in a weight-centric health model, ultimately discovering intuitive eating and beginning to share it with her clients. Jenna reflects on her feelings about the work she did before discovering intuitive eating and gives us insight into the challenge of shifting one's professional approach while also coming to terms with the past. This is a real, raw, and honest conversation, one that does not whitewash the difficulty of change, but instead embraces it as part of what it means to be an evolving, growing person and professional. Jenna is an anti-diet dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor with nearly 20 years of experience in the field. She works with women, female identifying, and non binary people who struggle with feeling comfortable in their bodies, emotional eating, and the fear of body shaming in medical or family settings. A strong LGBTQ plus ally and weight inclusive provider, Jenna encourages people to take up space and reject the idea that weight defines worth or health. Jenna also leads a group called Permission to Exist, which helps people in larger bodies navigate living in a fat phobic world. Hi, Jenna. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Of course. Thank you so much for chatting with me too. It's really awesome.
Yeah. Can you start by just telling me a little bit about who you are professionally, what type of work you do around food, weight, eating disorder treatment?
Sure. Well, I'm a registered dietitian and I'm a certified intuitive eating counselor.
Cool. Awesome. So, when we talk about intuitive eating, relationship or lack of relationship between food, weight, health, how we feel, obviously, in sort of larger society, there are a lot of messages about like what you eat will affect the way you look, which will affect your health and well-being. You've started to tell me the last time we spoke about your own process of moving from those perspectives to something a lot different. Can you tell me about what you believe about the relationship between food, health, weight at this point in time, what position you take?
Yeah, definitely. Um, so it's definitely it's been an interesting journey along the way. Um, uh, Back when I was uh in college and even before that with all of the messaging that my family gave me, I was like in that it was drilled into my head, like we got to make sure everybody's in smaller bodies in order to help them be healthy and things like that. And so as I had been a dietitian for the first 10 years of my career, that's kind of what I did as I helped people with weight loss, and I struggled with my own issues with chronic dieting and fighting with the scale, throughout that entire time. Um and then then 2015 happened. Um, and I wasn't in a great space mentally. I was dealing with a very deep depression, um and my husband at the time had told me that it was okay for him to cheat because I was fat. Um,
Ouch.
yes. And because I was not in that great mind space, I really took it to heart. He knew how to just get right to the core. And so I thought that it was my fault that the relationship had gone the way it did. And I ended up, splitting up with him after that because obviously I wasn't going to be spoken to in that way. Um, and uh, so, but after that, when I got on my own, I felt like in my brain I needed, in order to be happy, successful, and in a healthy relationship, I thought that I could only have that if I were in a smaller body. So I put myself on this crazy, crazy ass restriction. So crazy that it was really hard to explain it to people because there were just so many rules and things like that. It was obviously an eating disorder. At the I didn't know that at the time. I thought I was just dieting, for what people recommend, and what I was taught in school and all of that kind of stuff. Of course, though, I would have never done what I did to myself to other people I had worked with. That I was definitely in punishment mode. But I sat there and I was very restrictive with my food. It had to meet a certain nutrition criteria. I couldn't go to restaurants to eat. And if I did on those rare occasions, I had to be the one to tell the waiter how to make everything. And that just didn't really feel very authentic to me, you know. And then I was also over exercising excessively, and putting um, my heart rate into the danger zone because I felt that if it were less, that it wasn't working enough. So, and so I was doing this for a while, and um, and then it got to this point where, like, even though my body was in a different size, I um I still felt like it wasn't good enough, and I was worried the weight was going to come back. I was obsessed with food all the time. Um,
Okay.
and I was over exercising and doing all the things that I thought that being in a smaller body would do. It didn't. Like, I didn't feel successful in my work, because that was more of a self-worth thing. That wasn't really you know, um, a body size thing. But at the time, I didn't realize that. And the guys that I was dating, they really just treated me like crap, and just like, they used me and threw me out to dry after that. And and I didn't feel happy. The only time I felt maybe a smidgen of happiness was if somebody had commented on my body, or if I caught myself in the mirror, but that lasted like 5 seconds. And then my inner critic was right back in my head saying, nope, it's not enough.
Yeah.
And so, so it got to a point where I just was like, um, it was Thanksgiving, and I had made everything according to my restriction. Some things came out good, but some things did not, including my birthday cake. It just I it didn't work out with what I was trying to do, and it turned into this goo that didn't set up. But what did I do? I forced myself to eat it because I was like, oh, well, I want a birthday cake. So, and this is the only way I'm going to be able to get a birthday cake is if I eat it this way.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to give myself the holidays off. And then come January 1st, I'll get back on the swing of things and all of that. January came and went. I couldn't get myself to go back and do that again. It was just way too intense. And
Yeah.
so I kind of loosey goosed it for a while. And I was still restricting, but not as intently as before. And and then later down the road, I came upon intuitive eating,
Mhm.
and it was actually interestingly, I wasn't reading it for me. I was reading it because I was working with clients who had eating disorders, and I didn't know really how to support them.
Mhm.
But as I was reading it, it felt like everything was written for me.
Yeah.
And so after that, it just everything finally made sense. You know, why these diets don't work, why these, you know, why the weight always comes back, why we feel the way we do about our bodies and everything like that, and the punishment factor that we put on.
Yeah.
And so, sorry, that was a really long answer to your question, but in
Mhm.
essence, I found that um, intuitive eating, and I also use health at every size, which is kind of a cousin to it.
Mhm.
Um, I found that weight is not a determination of health, you know,
Mhm.
that it really doesn't say anything about our bodies. It's just a really boring number that talks about our relationship to gravity. And of
Fair.
yes, so it was and mind you, this was over a span of time. This wasn't something that I could just snap my fingers and all of a sudden think like that,
Right.
because of all of the drilling that had been put
Yeah.
into my head over the years. And but like there when I was in, and it was probably around the same size I am right now, but
Mhm.
um when I was in my biggest body, my my blood sugar, my blood pressure, and my cholesterol were actually in the low to normal range.
Yeah.
When I went through that eating disorder, it actually shot my cholesterol and my blood pressure up through the roof.
Wow.
And then when I came back to my normal size, as typically our bodies tend to do, at no fault of our own, by the way,
Yep.
um, but those numbers ended up going back to where they were.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so, I mean, and I know that there are people in bigger bodies who do have certain health issues. It doesn't necessarily mean that
Mhm.
being in a bigger body, um, or getting to a smaller body is actually going to change that, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah.
Or that people in smaller bodies don't have the same issues with blood
Mm.
pressure, cholesterol, or other types of issues that are blamed on weight. So, and the smaller bodied people are never told to lose weight or, do something like that. They're just given the treatment and
Yeah.
stuff.
So for you, it was very clear that your health was not only not linked to losing weight, but was linked to being in the size that your body wants to be.
Yeah, exactly. And that was really hard. That was really hard because I grew up as a teenager. I grew up in a very small body,
Mhm.
and so the fact that I ended up putting on weight,
Yeah.
and then being healthy at that size, it was so confusing because there was such conflicting information about that,
Yeah. Mhm.
but yeah, I realized that what a healthy weight is for a person is where they can be stable without restricting or over exercising. And there's lots of different ways of restricting that people might not realize is restricting. But
Yeah.
um but yeah, like you can stay stable at a weight without trying to fight with the scale or watch every morsel that goes into your mouth. That's where your body naturally sits. And it might not be what society deems as a
Mhm.
certain type of weight, you
Yeah.
know?
You've been through a pretty radical mindset shift. I want to rewind a little to what it was
Oh,
before
sure.
and the messages you were given before. I'll ask you some questions about that and then come back to the present and how you operate now. But when you had mentioned before that throughout your childhood and throughout your life, you were given the message that to be in a larger body is unacceptable.
Yes.
Can you share some specific memories of things that were told to you, or and I feel like anyone alive today can pull out a whole bunch of those, but what was that for you?
Yeah. Um, well, so my mom and my sister are naturally in bigger bodies.
Hmm.
And we come from Eastern European descent, and
Yeah.
those ladies are they're in bigger bodies. It's just kind of how the genetics work with that. But I was smaller, and but I heard everything that my dad and my mom were like pressing onto the family, that we always had. It was the low fat craze then, so everything was fat free or low fat. Um when my mom was constantly in Weight Watchers,
Yeah.
and um my dad put up a sign that it said, "Nothing tastes as good as being thin feels." And that
Hmm.
was hung up in the kitchen.
Wow.
Um, and that was, yeah. So every time that you'd walk into the kitchen, it was right there in your face. Um, and there was always my parents, well, my dad more in particular, he did a lot of body shaming.
Yeah.
My mom did too. She was always like, commenting about our bodies, and,
Yeah.
"Oh, so and so is this size or whatever. They really need to start taking care of themselves," and everything
Yeah.
like that. And they got to get their diabetes in check and stuff like that. And so it was this constant, pressure.
Yeah.
And then it was even pressure put on to me as the dietitian in the family. Can you help this
You
person?
fix everybody.
Yeah, and but the thing was is that those people, they didn't want my help,
Yeah.
and and I honestly didn't want to help them. Um so it was, not that I, didn't care, but I was just like, their family don't, it's like going on deaf ears.
Yeah.
So
Like
um
I can't be my family's therapist or
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So it was constant. And I know that my dad's mom, my nana, um she was in a very small body, but I'm pretty sure she had anorexia. And she had one of those bodies where I could take my arm and wrap it around her and it come back to the other arm. And
Mhm.
she definitely treated my sister differently than she did me, because I was in the smaller body and my sister was bigger.
Yeah.
So
Did all of that, like all of these messages that you were given, and so many people were given, you're not alone in that throughout your early life and adolescence, did that affect your decision to become a registered dietitian?
yes, it did. Um, I actually wanted to be a chef.
Hmm.
And I even wanted to, or I went to New York. I did a tour of the Culinary Institute of America.
Yeah.
Um, and I really wanted to go there. But I was like, no, you know what? My family would be happier if I was a dietitian. And plus, I also like the counseling part of things. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, but yeah. And there were other things that I wanted to do as well. But dietetics seemed like the
Hmm.
best route, and I never really felt connected to it as much during that first 10 years of my life before I found intuitive eating.
Yeah.
Um, it was once I found it, that's when I realized that that was where I was supposed to be. But yeah, it was definitely influential of my growing up of to go in that direction.
Yeah. So you had either doing culinary school or becoming a registered dietitian because, or in part because your family was like, this is the way to go. Like people need to lose weight. You're like, this is the direction I should take. And how long ago did you do your registered dietitian training, if that's okay to ask?
Um, so I graduated in 2004,
Okay,
and then after my internship and the exam, I became a dietitian in 2007.
got it. And what was the training like at the time? What were they teaching you about food, weight, and
Oh, yes. It was just it was definitely all about weight is bad, that that it's our job to help people lose weight, and all of the health issues were attributed to weight,
yeah,
and we had to like memorize how to calculate people's energy needs, and all of this stuff. It was drilled into our head, like, that women need like a certain amount of calories and men need a higher amount of calories. And um, uh, yeah, 1200 calories was a common weight loss. I mean, it depends on the person, like different
yeah,
circumstances, but 1200 was common. And then I came to realize, well, after that, during my recovery, that 1200 is a toddler energy need.
yeah,
So, um, but they didn't teach that. So, yeah, definitely very opposite of what intuitive eating is about.
yeah.
So,
And you go into your job as a registered dietitian with all this training about our job is to help people lose weight, and here's how we can do it.
um, yeah. I'm sorry, was there more to the question?
Yeah. I was just reflecting back what I was hearing from you.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Yes, pretty much. That's what it was. And that's anytime somebody hears that I'm a registered dietitian, that's immediately what they go to. Oh, yeah, I could stand to lose a few pounds or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
What kind of work were you doing when you had first entered the field?
a variety of different things. I worked at WIC for a while. Um, I worked at a program for developmentally delayed kids.
Okay.
Um, I worked long-term care facility, hospital, various avenues.
Yeah.
And then I finally landed on like telehealth um, counseling kind of thing. And that was really where I felt the most connected.
Yeah. So you were to begin with more in it sounds like medical nutrition than weight loss nutrition, or was it some of both? What did that look like for you?
Um, Yeah, there was clinical stuff that was mixed in. I hated clinical stuff.
Oh
The
yeah.
medical part of it, it wasn't definitely my spiel at all. But the but really, it was all like as the answers that most medical providers give to people in bigger bodies. Oh, lose weight and you'll feel better,
Yeah.
so yeah, so it was really always weight loss centered, and just the
Yeah.
reason changed of why.
Yeah. Yeah. What I hear from a lot of people who had previously been deeply immersed in weight loss society, especially as professionals, and then made a shift, is that it's almost sometimes painful to look back at that period and like your role in other people's treatment and trying to lose weight and being the support who's passing on what you were taught to them. What does it feel like for you when you look back at that time and the work that you were doing with clients?
Yeah, that's yeah, you definitely hit something there, because when I first when I first learned about intuitive eating, gosh, there was definitely a sense of regret and guilt and shame for putting people through the different things that I had suggested to them. The fat phobia that I held for myself and for others, or assuming that people weren't telling the truth when they were telling me what they were eating and stuff like that. It definitely, and maybe, you know, I don't know. Maybe this is just my brain trying to make something better of this, but um, maybe that's why I never really fully connected with dietetics, um, because it was just a bunch of shaming. It was a lot of food policing, and um, forcing things onto people and not really understanding their entire situation, or even understanding their situation, because I was dealing with the same thing, but thinking, that it was something different. And so there was a lot of regret and shame about that. And so that's why it's so important to me now that I work with folks to try to help them get out of that.
Yeah,
And sometimes it almost feels like I didn't do my job enough when somebody gets caught back up into the diet culture part of our world, and starting to restrict, or starting to go and adapt to some new way of eating, and um or like not really grasping the concepts that I'm sharing with them, because they're
yeah,
just so deeply ingrained in it.
yeah,
um, because I really, really, really want to work hard to help people not suffer the way that I did, and many others.
yeah. You've been through it yourself.
Yeah.
It felt like a powerful or a vulnerable moment to me when you were sharing some of the shame you're feeling when you're looking back at prescribing weight loss diets or not believing people. And it also felt like a powerful movement, especially in our field, to be able to be like, I I operated based on what I knew and based on what I was taught. And I look back now and can see that that was hurtful to myself and to people. And I can acknowledge that and move forward. from it.
Yeah.
Like that it
Yeah.
doesn't.
I'm sorry, keep going.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, it doesn't disqualify you as a person or as a provider. It's a part of your story. And you were able to make such a radical shift as a person and as a professional.
Yes, definitely. Maya Angelou's quote about when you know better, do you do better? That
Yeah.
really holds true with me. And I didn't know better at that time. I was doing what I was taught and told. And gosh, I'm getting a little tearful here.
Yeah.
Um,
Can you share what you're feeling in this moment as you're speaking?
uh, yeah, just yeah, it's I don't know how to put it to words. I guess I never felt good enough as a dietitian,
Yeah.
because I felt like, especially being in a bigger body, like people would think, what
Yeah.
does she know? She's in a bigger body. She's supposed to help me get to a smaller one. And so looking back at the way that I was practicing, it just makes it hard because it turned out that the way I was practicing wasn't the right supportive way of going about things, and I know now that this is the right space for me,
Yeah.
and this is my purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wish I did know better sooner. And
Yeah.
but I do know that um I probably did need to go through that
Yeah.
in order to be able to help people the way I do today.
Yeah. It's gotta have been so painful to be, it's almost like you were cast in a role that was inherently at odds with the way your body was and what you were feeling at a deeper level internally.
That's true. Yeah.
And when you're describing finding intuitive eating, there's a moment when you're suddenly given permission to just be who you already are.
Yes.
Like you don't have to keep fighting it.
Yeah, that's so true. And so often that we're told we can't be who we are, that we always have to be in fix it mode, and we always have to do better, and that we
Yeah.
always have to be at the top of our game. Um, and and if we're not at the top of our game, then yeah, I struggle a lot with perfectionism too.
Yeah.
And when I was going through school, um, I was always at the top of my class.
Yeah.
And once I got to college, I was so burnt out by that point that it was amazing that I actually got through.
Yeah.
But um, but yeah, this whole, like, yeah, it definitely was like that freedom, like you said, that I can be free to be myself, and myself is fine. I There's nothing inherently wrong about my body, or listening to myself, that I can trust myself.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that intuitive eating is about believing and strengthening that inner wisdom, because my inner wisdom has never led me wrong. I've never believed my inner wisdom,
Yeah.
but um but yeah. So
Yeah. There's something, so I can't think of the word, but in the way that you communicate and come across now, there's something that feels very soft, gentle, and almost it, like there's a kind of vulnerability, and it feels like permission to. Sometimes when I talk to people, or the energy people project can sometimes be like a more um I don't want to say stiff, but like a just a very fixed professional face or role. And I feel like as I'm speaking to
mm,
you, I can hear so much of who you are as a person.
yes, yes, definitely. I never I never really identified with that professional image, like
Yeah.
it just it that's not me. Um I am like I am one to just sit and have a conversation with clients, like how we're talking right now, or share things about myself with them so they can identify and resonate, and or just, even in other settings where like I would feel like emotional in some type of way, like I was always told, "Oh, don't cry.
Yeah.
Don't cry, hold up that way." Uh and it just felt so like a facade, you know?
Yeah.
So, and interestingly enough is that I was shamed for that, for not, coming off in a certain type of light. And my inner critic definitely, holds me to that same rigidity as well. But
Yeah.
this is me.
You're a deeply feeling person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the work you do now and what that's like working with people from an intuitive eating framework. What does that look like?
So, um, so yeah, I work with a company called Berry Street, and I do telehealth appointments. And um, my sessions with clients are not what a typical dietitian appointment would look like.
Yeah.
It's we we talk about what's happening in their life, like, how food is playing a role in that,
Yeah.
and then we talk about like how, if they say something to me like, "Oh, I didn't have the junk food today,"
Yeah.
um, then I start pulling apart, well, what is junk food? Why is that junk food? And then we start exploring and understanding like a different way of thinking about food without coming from that place of morality or
Yeah.
rigidity or rules, or trying to um separate our food, like, from
Yeah.
delicious and supportive foods, from ones that might not be that way. So it's very conversational and things like that. I definitely we There's a lot of education mixed into
Yeah.
the bunch, but
Mhm.
it really is just diving deeper into how people think about food, and getting them to kind of think of it in another type of way than what they're used to.
Yeah. You're working with people at a very human to you human level where you're in conversation with them and also working on giving them the same permission that you've learned to give yourself to enjoy food.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So,
You had started saying before that the work you do now, it feels like you've landed. Like this is where you're meant to be. This is what you're meant to be doing. Tell me a little bit more about those feelings. The feeling that this is it, this is where I belong. I'm doing my purpose.
Um, so I actually I look forward to going into work. I look forward to talking to clients and having these conversations and different than before. Like I would dread going into work, trying to talk about weight loss or, doing some sort of tube feed or whatever. That just never felt like it
Yeah.
was my calling. Um, so um, when it actually the feeling started like when I was reading the intuitive eating book, and it was kind of like I don't know, like a lightning bolt almost.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like it was just that clear message. And I know that that might not happen for other types of folks there, but I just knew, like, reading it just everything finally made sense.
Yeah.
And that it was my job to bring this information to other people. And so I mean it's definitely not an easy route by any means because I'm fighting against diet culture.
Yeah.
At last look, it's a $90 billion industry annually,
Yeah.
and people are constantly being dragged back into it. Or the idea of, you know, um, people feeling trying to navigate how to even like market this to people because
Yeah.
marketing and diet culture go hand in hand with each other, and I don't want to market in that same type of way, so I feel like I'm reinventing the wheel
Mm.
with that. And so it's challenging in some fronts about like making this a a position or a career that can pay my bills and things of that sort. But
Yeah.
I I feel like I feel like it doesn't really matter because this is really what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And and I'm going to reach the people who need to be reached. So yeah.
It's hard to sell intuitive eating to somebody who's been taught they need to lose weight.
Yes.
And the pain point that you are addressing is the when somebody comes in just like, I feel so at odds with my body. I want to repair something there.
Yes, exactly. And a fascinating thing that I've learned through my own recovery is that what we try, like whenever we have these food and body thoughts, it's actually not about our food or body. It's about something else that we've just been taught to use food and body as a way of addressing. And that rang true for me during my eating disorder. Um, uh, there's four main reasons of what people are really trying to search for, and when we can actually get to those reasons, we can address them significantly better than trying to do some sort of diet or restriction and or over exercise or what have you. um, so the first one is control. So, if people feel out of control in some aspects of their life, or they feel like they're not being heard, or, just different things like that, we can use food and body as a way of trying to feel that sense of control, because we're the ones who decide how we eat or what we do to our bodies, and things like that. So
Yeah.
control is a big one. Acceptance or self-worth is the second one. So, and that could be to anybody. That could be to ourselves. It could be to family, our friends, or our bosses, or our medical community, or society as a whole.
Yeah.
Um, and this could show up in so many different ways. Uh, I'll tell you a couple quick stories of how that showed up for me. Um, back back before I learned about intuitive eating, I was going to this networking event filled with other women entrepreneurs. First time I was going to this thing, okay, and it was at a restaurant. Um, and on the way there, I got really hungry, and I got this really weird craving for a burger because I normally don't get cravings for burgers. It was very strange. So, but anyway, so I went there and I was like, I need a burger. And of
Mm.
course, everybody at the table was ordering salad. And I was like, crap. I guess I have to order a salad because I don't want to stick out like a sore thumb, you know?
Yeah.
And so I changed my food for other people to accept me. And looking back now, I could see probably if I ordered the burger, it would have given other people permission to order other things. But
Mhm.
um,
You'd order the burger and everybody would be lining up behind you getting their fries and stuff.
exactly, exactly. Um, and so yeah, and of course the salad didn't hit me, so I ended up going and getting something after the meeting was over.
Yeah.
But yeah, I changed that because of wanting that acceptance.
Yeah.
Another way was I was going out on a date with someone. It was a blind date. And as I was getting ready, this was after my recovery. So I was able to be a little bit more introspective with it.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, I got all of these body thoughts. And I was like, whoa, where's all this coming from? You know? And turned out I was anxious because I thought the person wouldn't like me because of my body. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna put on some clothes that I like, that I feel comfortable, that I think look good on me, and I'm
Yeah.
just gonna go see what happens. Turned out the guy was a douchebag, didn't deserve my time at all.
Yeah.
So, but the body thoughts that I was having weren't really about my body. It was about that I wanted the person to like me, and so. Uh, so it really wasn't about what I thought it was. And most people would immediately go to, oh, I got to do something to change this body.
Yeah.
But when you can recognize that it was that it was just about wanting to be liked and acknowledged and all of that, um, it took on a different meaning, you know?
Yeah.
So, all right. So the third one is a sense of distraction. So like if life is like super chaotic or even if it's super boring, we can use food and body as a way of taking our attention away from that.
Yeah.
So, because, restrictions, eating disorders, diets, whatever, they are so consuming,
Yeah.
all the planning and the shopping and the cooking and the blah, 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 all of that. It's, it's very consuming. And so if we don't want to pay attention to whatever's happening, we can use that as a way of taking our attention.
Yeah.
Um, and the last one is a sense of punishment. So, and it doesn't even have to be about our food or body. It could be about something completely unrelated, like, oh, I didn't get my to do list done today, so I can't eat until I get that finished.
Yeah.
Or I had an interaction with somebody that didn't go the way that I wanted, so I don't get to enjoy this cookie or something like that, or whatever the case might be. or I didn't work out enough, so I can't eat dinner or something like that. So, and usually I find that generally what somebody's really looking for usually fits into one of those four categories, or more than one of those categories. Um, Even if it's something like I want to have better endurance, or I want my health
Yeah.
to be better, yes, there is a physical aspect of wanting our bodies to feel good. And but I also think that that can come under number two of the acceptance piece,
Yeah.
because there's so much ableism in our world, that we're expected to have a certain level of endurance, a certain level of health, and that if we don't have that, that we're not going to be accepted, or we're going to be looked at as not making an effort, or things of that sort. So they generally can fit into one of those four.
That makes
So
sense.
yeah. Any thoughts on that?
That definitely makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I'm just thinking, I do feel like, and I've heard this from a lot of people, and I know from my own history as well, like the punitive quality that weight loss or overexercising often can have. And it feels very much qualitatively different when maybe some of those same, like exercising can feel very nourishing and kind and healthy when the
Mhm.
that is different.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a different mindset when it is just about helping your body work and feel well,
Yeah.
whether it's a matter of like stress relief, or better sleep, or heart health, or all of those different kinds of things. Yes, that can be very supportive. It doesn't mean that if you want those things that there's some sort of negative meaning behind it. But if, because of that punitive thing that you're talking about, if it has to meet a certain metric, if it has to meet, like how often you go, or what
Yeah.
kinds of movement you're trying to do, uh, not listening to what your body is saying. I remember one time, real quick. I remember one time that I was in this exercise class, and we were doing all of these different, like, squats and various types of calisthenics or whatever.
Yeah.
And we were on the squat part, and my knees were not liking it.
Oh,
And like they were significantly hurting, and
yeah.
they kept doing more and more and more squats, and they kept encouraging more and more and more squats. And so, people were inclined to follow what the teacher was saying.
Yeah.
um, but my body was trying to say, okay, you've done enough squats for
Yeah.
today, right? So when you're able to kind of channel back into what your body is saying, and be able
Mhm.
to honor that, that's a different kind of sentiment than just saying, no,
Yeah.
I really like this teacher, and I really feel like they know what's best for my body, so I'm going to follow suit. And I know they have best intentions in mind, so I'm just going to follow suit, even though my body's screaming at me to stop.
Yeah. And that's where the four underlying needs you were talking about come in. Is it's almost like those are the things that might push us to work at odds with our body instead of together with it.
Yes, exactly. I love how you said that. That's exactly what that is.
Yeah. What do you want to leave our listeners off with? What's, yeah.
Um, I would love to just remind folks that your weight is not your worth, that your weight is not a reflection of your character or your values or your health or just the human that you are.
Yeah.
It is just a number that talks about our relationship to gravity. And and you're allowed, you deserve to eat simply because you exist. And you don't have to sit and try to cut back as much as possible, um, because that in essence is actually hurting more than helping, you
Yeah.
know. And so I want you to be able to give yourself permission to be able to eat and have the energy and have the satisfaction and nourishment of your food. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to leave with.
Yeah. Thank you. And where can people find you if what you're sharing resonates, if they want to connect or work with you?
Sure. Sure. So my website is called your-nutrition-ally.com. And I I'm on Threads right now with this geopolitical climate and stuff. My social media is kind of up in the air of where I want to spend my time.
Yeah.
So I suppose the best thing to do is just reach out to me on your-nutrition-ally.com.
Awesome. I'll link that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Jenna.
Thank you.